Hello, my little Luxxes. This is another episode of Luxxxy Charms, and I am your host, Charsie Luxxx. But don't let my costume set off any alarms. Today, I am a friendly leprechaun to share with you a special treat. So come one, come all, come gather, and come have a seat. So, if you cannot tell from my very special leprechaun cosplay today, that I am doing one of my favorite horror franchises, which is the Leprechaun franchise. And I have grown up with this one, especially this was a tradition in my family. Well, I should say, once I got to the age where I started liking horror movies, but my dad and my brother loved horror movies their entire life, but it took me until 8th grade before I started getting into horror movies along with them. Every St. Patrick's Day, we would gather together and we would watch Leprechauns. Yeah, obviously there's an entire series of the films. So for this past month, I have been watching the Leprechaun franchise, and I need to give a special shout out to all my friends in our movie watch group where we've been consistently watching them all, so I appreciate you guys watching them with me, and I know how ridiculous and cheesy they can be for some people, but I love and adore them. So thank you to everyone in my horror group that was enjoying and watching them with me. So shout out to Brian, Dusty, Moore, Omar, and of course Mari and Dee whenever they could come and join. And I mean, we kind of did a nice rotation in that. And Griff, I think you got to watch at least one with us, maybe two. So thank you for watching all of them with me. And that was a special treat for me. So I figured for a special treat that I would basically do a review and kind of a quick synopsis on all of them from this, and also by the end give you my rankings of all 8 films. Now, mind you, technically Leprechaun Origins is not a part of the franchise. I actually did some somewhat deep diving, digging into it and that, and they're claiming now that that one's not supposed to be a part of it, even though I could have swore originally it was supposed to be the prequel, the origins to the Leprechaun story, but they took a darker look at it. We lump it in for the whole thing because, you know, it's Leprechaun Origins, so it kind of symbolizes that it's supposed to be a prequel to the other films. But so for today, for my whole series, I am going to lump it together. Quick spoiler alert for everyone. I am about to do a quick synopsis and talk about the Leprechaun franchise. So if you have not seen these films, this is a quick warning that if you do not want any spoilers, you probably do not want to participate in this episode. You will have to forgive me if I go and look at my notes and kind of remind myself what I'm doing. Like I said, I kind of do a quick overview of each film, give a little detail of some of the actors and actresses. And of course, I hope I don't butcher names or anything, especially a shout out to my friend Josh, because he told me the proper way to pronounce Warwick Davis, because apparently I pronounced it Warwick, but it's Warwick. So, I apologize to Warwick Davis if I ever say Warwick. So our first movie of the franchise, of course, is Leprechaun, the original from 1993. We have a very young Jennifer Aniston who plays the character of Tori. Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun, which he is for most of the Leprechauns in the series. Ken Holland as Nathan. Mark Holton as Ozzy, which we get a revisit of Ozzy's character in a future movie in the franchise as well. And Robert High Gorman as Alex, who was the kid in the film. And John Sandlerford is JD, which I think JD was the father to Tori's character in the movie. A quick synopsis of the original movie, which most people in the horror fam, I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you're like me, and as a tradition, you watch it every March or for any time that St. Patty's Day comes around. As the story goes, that the leprechaun gets his gold stolen, and he's a trickster himself and he doesn't like being fooled, so he goes after Mr. O'Grady, who had originally stolen the gold from him. And of course, O'Grady, I think it's O'Grady. For some reason, I didn't write down his name or the actor's name, so shame on me for that. He's able to trick the leprechaun and lock him into a box with a 4-leaf clover. But unfortunately, years later, when a new family moves in, which is Tori and her father, JD, and they are, of course, moving around furniture in that, they end up moving this clover that is protecting the leprechaun from getting out of the box. And of course, when he's out, he wreaks havoc and starts going on a killing spree, and he wants his gold back. So we get the first leprechaun of the franchise, and of course we get very famous lines from there as well, which is the line of "fuck you, Luxxxy Charms." So and if you haven't figured out by now that my name, Luxxxy Charms, is a spin-off on Lucky Charms, so Luxxxy Charms. Yes, I have always kind of had a spin with Charsie Luxxx when thinking, like, try your luck with Charsie Luxxx, that it was always kind of an Irish luck 4-leaf clover type of idea. So kind of a nice another connection there. So yeah, I might be showing off my leprechaun nails just a little bit. So these are by my fantastic friend Dee. Her and her daughter do hand custom made nails. So she made me some leprechaun nails. So these were perfect for today, and obviously I'm going to be linking her in here. And if you want a fantastic handmade one-of-a-kind pair of nails, you better hit her up, because she is fantastic. But both her and her daughter are fantastic. After the first film, we get into Leprechaun 2, which was in 1994. Warwick Davis as Leprechaun again, and Siobhan Durkin as Bridget, Charlie Heath as Cody, and I just kind of put like the few main ones in there. Sandy Barron, who was Morty, which he had a very famous death in the movie. And so on the Leprechaun's 1000th birthday, he seeks vengeance on one of his slaves by vowing that he would marry one of his slave's descendants, because he wanted to find a bride. And of course, he was going to marry a descendant of the slave that had betrayed him years before. And of course, the only one who can save the girl is her boyfriend. Now, this one's kind of a weirder one compared to the first one. To me, the second one just doesn't align as well, and it doesn't have as many of the classic funny lines as what the first one does. And we get a lot of really cool kills in this one, though. Like, you get the lawnmower kill where the one guy's face gets pushed into, well, smooshed into the lawnmower. Morty, which he gets the classic kill where he makes a wish, but of course, you know, being the leprechaun, he tricks him and reverses the wish on him, kind of like a djinn, where you wish for something good, but somehow he can turn it against them. And because, you know, he wishes to be rich, or he wishes that he has the gold, and well, he gives him the gold, but it ends up imploding out of his body, so he literally had the gold inside of him. So then we have Leprechaun 3, which was in 1995, which I kind of appreciate that they kind of steadily are going year after year with these. And have Warwick Davis again as Leprechaun, John Gaddis as Scott, Lee Armstrong as Tammy, John DeMetta, I apologize once again if I butcher names, as Fazio, or I should say the magical Fazio, because he was the magician in the movie, and Michael Callan as Mitch, and Caroline Williams as the very fantastic Loretta, Marcelo Tubert as Gupta, and Tom Dugan as Art. And on this one, I kind of put the quick synopsis of: this time, the evil leprechaun finds himself in Las Vegas, his gold ends up stolen again. Trying to get his gold back, he grants wishes to unsuspecting people that instead backfires, and he wreaks havoc, mischief, and even at one point infects Scott. And I like making the joke that turned him into a were-leprechaun. Now, I can't specifically remember if it was a bite or if it was supposed to be the green blood from the leprechaun that infects Scott, but either way, Scott starts turning into a leprechaun himself because he's infected by the leprechaun. This one is probably one of the most remembered besides the first film. That this one is probably the other one that is the most quoted. It's hilarious, just the kills that they have in it, and of course the cast and crew that they have a part of this one is fantastic. And I was gonna say Loretta's character, her kill probably is one of the funniest ones. No, I take that back. Mitch's death with the naked robot, that one is probably the funniest one. So of course, if you want to see boobs, this is probably the one to see it. But you get to see a robot with some boobies. So as I'm giving the synopsises, I'm kind of probably giving away little hints of which films I like a little bit more than the other ones. The ones that I'll have a little more excitement for, or, you know, talking about certain scenes, like when Fazio dies, and, you know, does a magician really want to be cut in half? Possibly. Probably not. But I'm trying to keep for my full number of favorites down to the lowest ones, but I'm saving that for the end. Next we get to Leprechaun 4, which is Leprechaun 4 in Space, and that was in 1996. And of course we have Warwick Davis as the Leprechaun again, and a completely new crew, pun intended. The new cast for this one is Brent Jasmer as Books, Jessica Collins as Tina, Guy Siner as Dr. Mittenhand, which he was a fun character. Actually, what am I talking about? All the characters in this one are fun. Gary Grossman as Harold, Rebecca Carlton as Princess Zarina, Tom Colsuri as Metalhead, Miguel A. Nunez Jr. as Styx, which I had the whole time I'm watching the movie, and all of a sudden it dawned on me and I'm like, oh, I know what I recognize him from. He's Spider. So he was Spider from The Return of the Living Dead, and so it just kind of became funny that Styx and spiders. And then we have Debbie Downing as Dolores and Rick Peters as Mooch. You know, you have to have the classic one where I think every horror movie out there, like the most popular of the franchises, 90% of the time they usually get like a weird B-rated cheesy one in space version, because we have a Jason in space, Critters, which I do know that Critters, you know, they come from space, but they had an actual episode, which was the fourth one, where it was in space, so specifically happened in space. Would love to see a Freddy in space. I mean, you could easily do that, because sleep paralysis or something, I don't know, where you have people who are all frozen because let's say they are traveling in space and they're trying to rehabit another planet because Earth has been devastated and there's nothing left. Since you have to move light years away, they have to be in sleep, whatever that is. You're frozen in space so that you just sleep the whole way. I'm not thinking my technical terms. I could look it up, but we're not going to. But you're traveling to another planet, and somehow they thought it would be a good idea to take all these genes and technical problems from scientists and that, because they wanted to learn from their past mistakes, and one of these things was Freddy, and so he found his way, like a broken seal of something, and he gets somehow into the computer system of this spaceship, so all these people who are stuck in sleep have to fight for their lives and they can't wake up. So come to Charsie Luxxx for more bad movie ideas. Anyway, is it cryospace? something, cryo sleep. Anyway, so you have the Leprechaun 4 in space episode. What, of course, this one ends up going in is the fact that the evil leprechaun this time finds himself in space. He was trying to impress the Princess Zarina to be his bride because he wants to be a king. Well, she wants to marry him because she wants his gold, because her father is a very poor king. And of course, in the process of this space crew goes to find, because they want to save the princess, well, not realizing that they're actually not saving the princess for the king, that they actually, it's an under thing from the evil Dr. Mittenhand, that he wanted her blood because her blood has healing powers or healing abilities to it. So very interesting episode, and like I said, you get to think of the cheesiest things that you can come up with, especially for the space episode, because by the end of it you have a Dr. Mittenhand turned into a weird space booger looking thing. So is it fitting that a spider-like creature tries to eat Styx, who was called Spider in the Return of the Living Dead? So then we go to Leprechaun 5, which is Leprechaun in the Hood. And of course, if you want to think as cheesy as you can, I mean, I thought the space one was cheesy, but both this one and the sixth one, which is Back to the Hood, that these ones are fantastically cheesy and bad, but they're so bad, they're great. If you're like me and you like bad, that becomes great because it's a shit binge that you love to shit binge and watch and have fun. Anyways, back to topic. So Leprechaun 5 in the Hood, which was in 2000, is 3 young rappers decide to get even with the wrong man, which was played by Ice-T. And because they end up freeing an evil leprechaun who goes on a killing spree to get back his gold. We have the leprechaun, who is Warwick Davis again. You have Mac Daddy, who is Ice-T. And oh my god, it is worth it just to see his character in this film, especially at the beginning when he's got the huge afro and the plaid bell-bottom pants. Oh my god. Or I can't remember, it was his character or the other guy that was with him that had him, but I was obsessed with those plaid bell-bottom pants. Ugh. Need them. We have Anthony Montgomery as Postmaster P, Rashawn Nall as Stray Bullet, and Red Grant as Butch, and Dan Martin as Jackie D. A lot of fantastic people that show up in here that I didn't even remember them being in the film from the first time I've watched it. We have Leprechaun 5, which was in the Hood, so you go from that one to Leprechaun 6, Back to the Hood in 2003, and that one is about Emily Woodrow and her friends find a box full of gold. However, they were warned by a psychic beforehand to take warn and take heed that evil was coming to them. It ends up becoming a battle with the evil leprechaun because obviously he wants his gold back, or as we say, you know, he wants his shillings back.
Me gold shilling.
Of course, Warwick Davis for the leprechaun again, and we have Tinga Miller for Emily. And she did a fantastic job in this movie. Don't mind my kitty, scratchy, scratchy. Laz Alonso as Rory. Paige Kennedy as Jamie. Sherry Jackson as Lisa. And Keisha Sharp as Chanel. Oh, this one's just a fun one to say. Sticky Fingers as Cedric. When we move from Leprechaun 6, we move to Leprechaun Origins, which, like I said, this one's technically not supposed to be a part of this one. I've thought for years since it came out that it was supposed to be a part of it, especially with a name like Origins, that you make it sound like it's a part of something. And of course, I was told for years by people that it was supposed to be a part of this franchise. And then, of course, you watch it and you're like, that is not related at all. And now, right in like Google searches and that, it'll even say that it's not a part of the franchise. Maybe they backtracked from the time frame that it first originally came out. I don't know. I mean, if you know the answer and you know the history of what Leprechaun Origins, if it was supposed to be a part of it, or if it was supposed to be like its own separate thing, let me know in the comments down below, because it's like I love learning these little facts in that, and sometimes I'll hear something and I may hear it wrong or remember it wrong. For Origins, we don't have Warwick Davis, that this is a totally different guy playing the Leprechaun, who is Dylan Pastel. Stephanie Bennett as Sophie, Andrew Dunbar as Ben, Melissa Roxburgh as Jenny, Brendan Fletcher as David, which I really do like him as an actor, and he's done a lot of one of those roles where it's like he's the guy that you don't want to like, but you end up really liking him just because of the actor himself and what he can do. Gary Chalk as Hamish, and Teach Grant as Sean, which Sean's character is probably my favorite one in the entire film. Like, you start off wanting to hate the guy for specific reasons because he acts like a total jerk to these guys, which of course I should give the synopsis for you real quick. So like I said, I put a little note in here saying that this film is saying that it's not supposed to be related to the Leprechaun films, but how do you not relate it? Two young couples traveling through Ireland find themselves at a remote village to learn some famous history. Unfortunately, the town decides that they are going to use these couples as a sacrifice to the leprechaun that haunts their village. Or I shouldn't say haunts their village. This one, I specifically even said this one is more horror creature feature related, not the typical cheesy B-rated funny type of style dark humor that all the other ones have. And this one, I don't really see this as a leprechaun. Like, I get the fact that this monster that they have in it is supposed to be attracted to gold, it wants treasure, which would be the only thing related to it, because leprechauns are tricksters. They're not necessarily monstrous, but I do not relate this one as being a fae creature. I relate this one more being a monster, a beast type creature. Sean's character in the film ends up being one of my favorites, but you hate him like right away. He's just a total jerk to him and everything. You're like, God, what is with this guy? Why is he such a dick? And later in the movie, when the couples are trying to run away, they're trying to get away from this monstrous creature, this leprechaun, and Sean was mean to them because he didn't agree with what his father in the village was doing, and he wants to save these people. So by the end of the film, you know, Sean turns out to be a really good guy. He's not actually a bad guy. So I did like that aspect in the film. Now, to go into it a little more with detail is the fact that I don't mind this film. If I could take it out of context with all the other Leprechaun films, especially if they're claiming that it's not supposed to be with the Leprechaun franchise, then yes, I do like this movie. But I'm very oriented, like, with Irish background and with heritage and history, my love of lore, my love of urban legends and everything, that this was not a fae. This was not a leprechaun creature to me. I get, like, everyone can have their own interpretations of something, but especially if you are going and you're filming the idea that you are in Ireland, I want it to follow the lore, like, almost to a T, where if this was just labeled not as a leprechaun, but just labeled as a monstrous, beastly creature, I would actually really love this film. So, but I think because of me going into it with a bias because of the Leprechaun franchise to what this was, you're disappointed in it because it's not like the other ones, and then it's like you come back to it and it's like, okay, it's not even supposed to be a part of it. So I have very mixed feelings about this film. Like, very mixed feelings. So then we come to the last and final film of this franchise, which is Leprechaun Returns, which was in 2018. This one is directly related to the original first film. Technically, all the ones in the middle that are a filler technically don't even have to exist. You can have one and you can have Returns, which we'll get on the subject of certain things with the Leprechauns coming up here soon, so stay tuned. Unfortunately, they did not bring back Warwick Davis, which he did say that he wouldn't mind returning to the character again, so it would be really fantastic to see if they could bring back one more film, one more time, so that we could get one final one with Warwick Davis. It would be really fun to see, you know, him versus Child's Play. So have a Chucky versus the Leprechaun. That would be really interesting to see. So we had Lyndon Porco, who was the Leprechaun in this one, and you have Mark Holton comes back as Ozzy again. Unfortunately, his character, you know, I will put hopefully at the beginning of somewhere up at the front spoilers if you haven't seen all these films, but unfortunately Ozzy passes away in the film, but he comes back and he's a ghost and he helps the main character in this, which the main character is Taylor, oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this name, Taylor Spritler, and she is Lila, and she's supposed to be the daughter of Tori. So we are revisiting the idea of Tori's character being here, but she has passed away. So it's her daughter who comes to live back at the house, the original house where everything happened in the first film, because it has become a sorority house now. So you have the other girls in the sorority, who is Peppy Sanuga as Katie, Cy Bennett as Rose, and Emily Reed as Meredith, and of course several other characters who end up joining them at the sorority. So these girls decide to unfortunately unearth the trapped leprechaun from the well, and they free him. So of course, once again, he wants his gold and he starts going on a killing rampage to try and get his gold back. And so we kind of get to relive some classics from the first original film and tie in together with the idea that he remembers Tori. Well, obviously, I mean, Tori was one of the ones that stuck him in the well, but so he wants to seek his revenge through the daughter, Lila. You get to the end of the film where they are clever enough to defeat the evil leprechaun again. So poor leprechaun just had no luck whatsoever. Even though he's got all the luck in the world through his coins, I had these questions that were, why so many leprechauns in the films? Or is this the same leprechaun in every film that we are seeing? And I really, really enjoy my friend Dusty's take on it. So when we were watching the films and that, he had brought up the subject of it's possibly not even the same leprechauns. That each film, you're technically seeing a brand new different leprechaun. Because let's face it, there are supposed to be many leprechauns. You don't just have one leprechaun, you have multiple leprechauns. So I really like that idea. So shout out to Dusty, and you know what, I latch on to that idea now. That is a great idea, that it's not the same leprechaun. Yes, it's played by the same Warwick Davis, but each one looks different, each one's dressed differently. Obviously, they all act similar. But now, would you like to think there are more than just one? Yes, I would like to think there's more than just one. And for each film, we do have possibilities of some of them repeating. Like, for instance, we have Leprechaun 1 and Returns. That would be the same Leprechaun. You have Leprechaun 2. That would be a different one. Leprechaun 3 is also a different one. Leprechaun in Space, that's even a different time frame. This could be in the future when, kind of like Jason X, where there's no context to why he's in space except for the fact that he wants to marry this alien princess. So we don't know the full context to it, but that could be a different one. And then, but Leprechaun 5 and 6, that could be the same Leprechaun because they're both in the hood. And of course, Origins, which technically not supposed to be related, but totally different leprechaun altogether. And by the end of that film, you find out that there are multiple leprechauns in that area. So that one's proving that you have a chance for multiple leprechauns. All right, so the moment you've been waiting for, which would be my rankings of the films from the franchise, which I feel bad for Origins because it kind of gets it's gonna get a bad one. The forewarning, that's your only spoiler for this, because it's not anything like them, because it's not supposed to be, apparently. But anyway, so I had to think long and hard on this, especially going back through, watching all the films again, and I'm realizing that I have my favorite, and it's gonna be locked in, and one is Leprechaun 1, the original. And mostly for the fact of the history of it, what it means to me, and that it's always was a classic, that on how many memories I have with that one, of on St. Patrick's Day, watching it with my dad and my brother, and then as you grow up, you watch it with your friends, and how many, even at Halloween parties, I think we would throw in Leprechaun every once in a while, just because of how much we all loved and enjoyed that film. And I'm always shocked when I look on IMDb and just to see how low the rankings are, or with the Rotten Tomatoes from Voodoo and that, it's got such low ratings, and I love this film. It's everything that I love about horror, and from the time period and everything. Number 2 is Leprechaun 3, so when the Leprechaun is in Las Vegas, which now I'm hoping I did a synopsis for that one, because, okay, yeah, I did, because I talked about the Were-Leprechaun. My brain today, you have no idea what my work shift was like today, so I think I'm 3 different people at this point in time now, so. But yes, so Leprechaun 3. This one is a huge contender with 1. Like, they are neck and neck, like, back to back, that they're both going to be one of those where it's like, you need to watch them together. Because the one-liners, the makeup, the acting, just everything about it is fantastic. And so 3 is definitely moved up there for me, and I have a huge appreciation for it as well, thanks to my friend Brian, or B, and that one is his favorite. And of course you get so many wonderful deaths in that one. For me, which is 3, which a lot of people wouldn't agree with me, but I have a thing for the ones that are in space. My favorite of I should say my second favorite of any of the ones with Jason from the Friday the 13th is Jason X, would technically be my second one, because my favorite is the second one. There's just something about the grittiness of the second one that I absolutely love, but I also love Jason X, maybe a little bit for that hologram scene where he's doing the sleeping bags and, you know, smashing a few people with them into a tree. But anyway, so Leprechaun 4 in space is my number 3 favorite. And then you have number 4, which is Leprechaun Returns. I do have a huge appreciation for this film, and that one is actually because of T. Carter, and he actually was the reason why I even watched the film. When it first came out, I had no interest in watching it. I was so tired of reboots at that point in time, and that's always what it felt like. People had to reboot horror movies, which we're still seeing now, and wasn't even gonna watch it. Well, T. Carter actually reached out when he had put up his rankings, and I'm like, wow, you have that pretty high up, and he goes, oh, it's fantastic, it's wonderful. So a huge thank you to T. Carter for suggesting it, and I do have a huge appreciation for that one. And 5 is Leprechaun 5 in the Hood. How can I not appreciate something that has iced tea in it? And number 6 is Leprechaun 2. This one's pretty low on my list. Like, 2, honestly, 2 can even almost be my least favorite on some days. That, I don't know, there's something about it that just rubs me wrong in the second one. I mean, maybe somebody else could touch on it, but this one's lackluster compared to the other ones. I think there's a huge ick factor about the fact that he's trying to force himself to have a bride, so it could have something to do with that too. it could have a huge thing to do with that. So then 7 for me is Leprechaun 6, which is Back to the Hood. And then last but not least, 8 is Leprechaun Origins. Like I said, Origins might not have the best... If it's not supposed to be a part of this franchise, then yes, it would be in a different context. But if I'm going to rank it with the other films, it's going to be the last one for me. But if I'm ranking it as a monster creature feature, it's a really good movie. Go into it not thinking about it being related to these films, and then you could possibly see it being a decent, good film. So we'll go with that. So I know a lot of people probably won't agree with my rankings, but you know, we each can have our own rankings of the films and what we think of them. In fact, in the comments down below, go ahead and tell me what your rankings are. Tell me what you agree with. Tell me what you disagree with. Tell me some facts that you know. That I mean, I love learning about these movies, and if I could have done more deep diving into them each, I totally would. And I wish I had the amount of free time that I had planned that I was going to put into these. But, you know, as I kind of touched on before, a lot of things have been going down at my day job, at my real job, that, yeah, I get home and I become a zombie. Like a literal zombie, just in the couch, not existing anymore. But I'm more than happy that I can sit and I can enjoy films. So, I mean, so me just going through and just doing quick synopsises, kind of doing my personal reviews. Remember, these are my opinions. Does not mean that they have to be your opinions. And just because if you disagree with me, doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it. Just let me know as your idea and your synopsises, your reviews, and what ones are your favorites and loves, because we don't always have to agree. In fact, you could hate all of these movies. You could maybe only like Origins and not like the other movies because of the fact that you don't like cheesy B-rated movies. But anywho, I get off subject so easily. But I hope you enjoyed this little review of the Leprechaun series, and I want to wish you all a happy St. Patrick's Day, happy St. Patty's Day, and if you absolutely love and adore having your nails done and want something really fancy for horror-inspired nails, definitely hit up my friend Dee and her daughter for Nails MD. Thank you once again for joining me on another Luxxxy Charms. I hope a horror movie review was perfect for the setting and especially for the theme that we were going for. I'm not necessarily a scary Warwick Davis inspired looking leprechaun, but a cutesy one. Like I said, we all have our own interpretations of things. But you can find me on my Twitter for Charsie Luxxx, which is Luxxx, or on my Instagram for Charsie87. You can also find me on my other YouTube channel that I do with my friend DC called Little Channel of Horrors. And you can hopefully keep seeing weekly new videos from me. We'll see how my life keeps transpiring. This right now is my safe place, my safe space, keeping me sane. This is where I get to vent, do things that I don't have to think too much on. Like this one, I was a little more thinking that I needed to do more than the usual. Like I'm hoping if I do more reviews on that, I can bring in a little more fun facts and things like that. Like when talking about Warwick Davis, with the fact that his first role was in Star Wars, he was one of the Ewoks, and that he's got all these fantastic stories about Mark Hamill got him all these Star Wars toys that he didn't have, and Carrie Fisher, when she thought he was overheating in his costume, she'd bring him chocolate milk and cookies, and just really sweet stories like that. Like that's the kind of stuff and meat filler that I would love to bring to this channel, but I need my brain to be there. So, But I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for giving me your time, joining me, and just sparing any little bit of moment of time that you have just to spend it here with me. So I love and appreciate every single one of you, and thank you once again for watching. And whatever you are doing with your day, I hope you have a fantastic day. Until next time, bye.